Second chances really are incredibly important, and this rings especially true for music. I will confess that the first album by Danish Faroese band Iotunn left me feeling somewhat indifferent, but based off the incredible album from Hamford that came out earlier this year, featuring Jon Aldara on vocals for both bands, I was willing to step up for a second shot. So is this album a realisation of the potential once seen on the first outing, or have Iotunn once again failed to capture my attention? Guys, gals and non-binary pals, my name is Ian, this is Rhyme Signatures, and we are once again opening the lid on the best new releases in prog rock and metal. So yeah, I wasn't kidding in that little intro bit. I remember listening to Iotunn's debut album of Access All Worlds 3 years ago, and while I recognised the musical talent that was clear and obvious to anyone with functioning ears, something just didn't click for me. I couldn't place it. I wasn't even really into Jon Aldara's soaring vocals. I'm thinking I just wasn't in the right headspace for that kind of over-the-top melodrama that the album's vibe carried. So I ultimately shelved the band onto the worth keeping an eye on section of my musical memory banks, and I largely moved on. But then earlier this year, Men Guds Hånd er Sterk by the remarkable Hamford dropped, and I gave it a pretty glowing review, and I'll stand by that, and I still happily call that one of the year's most enduring output. But when the penny dropped that this was the same guy on vocals as was on Iotunn, I started to become retroactively more interested in the band, started listening to Access All Worlds again, and in the 3 years that have now passed, I think I've started to figure them out. And then I saw the news of the upcoming new album, Kinship, and I started feeling a little bit of hype stirring within me. Could it be? Was I excited for this album? Was I finally over my debut album roadblock? I was beginning to think a hell yeah might be in order. So I tested the waters. I listened to the available singles, which is something I rarely do, as I kinda like to go into albums untainted, generally speaking, and I felt like I was having a moment akin to Anton Ego in Pixar's Ratatouille when he eats the titular dish. Hype was indeed back on the menu, and I'll tell you now, this review has come a teensy bit late as I've had to forcibly remove myself from listening to Kinship for just long enough to actually talk about my feelings of the album. So, the biggest and most obvious draw of this band, let's not beat around the bush here, it's Jon Aldara. It just is. From his work with Barren Earth and Hamford alongside Iotunn, he's just out there in the world to prove that he's got the most powerful voice around, and the range he displays on this album is nothing short of breathtaking. The opening track and longest song on the album, Kinship Elegiac, should be put in some kind of musical dictionary as a means to define the terms soaring, majestic, epic, and whatever other superlatives you care to think of. To describe Aldara's performances here as anything less than transcendent feels almost like an insult. His cleans are brimming with a confident power, his growls feel like a demon from the pits of the darkest hells, and to witness his switch up in styles for them to be done so effortlessly is one of the most extraordinary experiences of the year. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've yelled, "Shut the f*** up," in sheer amazement at what this man is capable of. I'd previously found him maybe a tad too maximalist, which is ironic coming from me, but this time around I think something's changed. He feels more restrained, more in control, more focused and less scattershot with his delivery. Whereas in Access All Worlds I found myself wanting to turn him down a little and put the theatricality away for a while, on Kinship I think he's found the balance between his soaring bombast and gutter-scraping growls absolutely perfectly. But obviously, one man alone does not make a band, and I'm pleased to report that everyone involved on this album has absolutely nailed the assignment. If ever there was a better representation of what progressive melodic death metal should sound like, then frankly I've yet to hear it. Jesper and Jens Grass, who I'm assuming are brothers based on the surname, are absolutely ridiculous on their axe work on this record. Everything moves and flows in such a fluidic, well-oiled fashion. The riffs and solos breathe and segue between each other with a grace that will put the cast of Swan Lake to shame. There is something so utterly mesmerizing about them trading off against each other so well. From the heartfelt, down-tempo, clean tones to the frighteningly brutal riffing at times, it feels like there's no job that these two guys can't handle, and it makes every second of their exposure in the album a complete joy to listen to. But as you guys well know, at the end of the day, I'm a low-end rhythmic kind of guy, so my heart belongs to the drums of Bjorn Anderson and bass of Eskil Rask. To describe their sounds as anything less than rolling thunder would be kidding yourself. The fluency and interplay between them is absolutely glorious, making for a solid foundational bedrock for the JG brothers and Aldara to dance atop. Listening to such deep tones and rolling fills underneath the apocalyptic ballet and savagery of the guitars and vocals is such a goddamn treat, and it makes for an album that, despite how deep, layered and complex the overall sound is still remarkably easy to enjoy on a surface level. I think what I appreciate a lot about this album is that it feels like in true John Hammond of Jurassic Park fashion, absolutely no expense has been spared. This is so far beyond any concerns of any kind of sophomore slump that it makes the mere idea of suggesting such a thing could apply to this band seem absolutely farcical. It's honestly extremely hard to imagine where Iotunn can possibly go from here, but I am certainly very excited to find out. Each song feels like its own little kingdom, its own little fully realised exercise in how to craft some of the most potent metal of the 2020s. The shortest song on the album is just over 5.5 minutes long, so there's absolutely no room on this record for interstitial time wasters. Everything stands tall, stands proud, and makes choosing favourite songs extremely difficult because frankly they're all a little bit brilliant. From the epic opening and closing tracks of Kinship, Elegiac, and the anguished Ethereal, which sees the band throwing frankly every trick in the book at the listener, to the more straightforward and heavy-rocking Twilight, I Feel the Night, and Earth to Sky, to the muted and sombre Iridescent Way, Iotunn have truly left no stone unturned on this album. Now, I know, I'm gushing, I get it, I know, but honestly I feel it's warranted. I've not been hit quite so hard in ages by an album that exemplifies just how good, how technical and yet still melodic this kind of extreme music can be. This feels like metal for the masses, accessible and a quick fix with its shorter, snappier and punchier tracks, but yet still like a guarded secret between those of us who favour the subtleties and intricate complexities of more thought-provoking progressive metal. It makes for what feels like an all-you-can-eat buffet of some of the best music that 2024 has to offer. But, and there's almost always a but, isn't there, this record still misses out ever so slightly on the coveted 10 out of 10 ranking, feeling more like a 9.6, 9.7 if we're going to get fussy and into decimalization. I love this album, okay? I really do. I want to jettison copies of it at passing strangers to enrich their lives. But even I can acknowledge that this isn't going to be everything for everyone. There is a lot of music to digest here. I mentioned earlier that every song on here stands on its own merits and feels like a fully formed personality of music, but that can sometimes feel overwhelming. There are times where I need to take a breather and listen to the album in two halves, taking a rest after I Feel the Night, going away and cleansing with the new Bluey album or something, and then resuming from the coming end. There's almost, I don't know, too many ideas packed into this record. It's relentless in a way that might be intimidating to people who prefer something lighter, easier, and less intense. This is a marathon album, and some people are sprinters. Kinship feels its length, and that may or may not be a good thing for you. I'm honestly okay with this, as I like music to fill me up almost to the point of overflowing, but even I have a cut-off point some days when I've been listening to this record, so I can only imagine what a less patient person would be thinking of the length and density of this album. It's also all largely cut from the same style across the album's runtime, which further compounds on my points about length and feeling its runtime. There's not an enormous amount of variety of the sounds here. This is an album that showcases guitars and vocals, but not a great deal else. There's no kooky, proggy breaks in the music, no circus Wurlitzers or a cappella vocal sections or anything else of that ilk that you might be hoping for. No, what we have here is powerful guitars, powerful vocals, rolling bass and drums, and that's basically it. There is the late album break in the form of the 6th track ballad Iridescent Way, but I can't help but feel that the pacing of the album would have been improved by shaving, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 minutes off the closing track of the Anguished Ethereal to make for another shorter ballad inserted between, I don't know, Mistland and Twilight to allow for a greater use of peaks and valleys across the album's runtime. But I digress. This record is still a remarkable achievement, and a lot of these criticisms are ultimately down to my personal preferences, rather than there being anything dramatically wrong with the album from a songwriting or musicianship perspective. So, what else can I possibly say about Iotunn's Kinship? I'll be real with you all, I did not have a new album from these guys as being an Album of the Year candidate on my 2024 bingo card, but I live and love to be surprised by the music that I listen to here. I know that Access All Worlds had more than its fair share of supporters when it came out, but for as much as I have started coming around to it at long last, I cannot tell you enough how happy I am to finally be on board the good ship Iotunn. Maybe this album just found me at the right time. Maybe I was just in the mood for something dense, rich, and sumptuously flavoured as this. But Kinship has hit me like a ton of bricks, and the fact that it's taken me this long to step back, assess my thoughts and feelings about the album, and somehow manage to word vomit something more coherent than just unga bunga me likey should speak as a testament to just how effing good this record really is. Like I've said, I'm not expecting this to scratch everyone's itch, no, but if you're as musically inclined as I am towards big guitars, big vocals, and big tracks that keep on firing out hook after hook after hook, then honestly, I think you're going to have an incredible time with Kinship. I've got my vinyl copy of this appearing at some point, one hopes, before the end of the year, and I would of course extend my recommendation of a physical purchase to you all as well. Check this one out, strap yourself in for a long ride, and trust me when I tell you this is one heck of a time. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved this one, if you hated this one, please talk to me about your experiences with the album in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you liked the video, please do tell your friends all about little old me, and please do throw me a subscription if you've been enjoying my content so far. And until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.